computer, so at least we have a recording. Right, we are on and recording, so thank you very much for being here.
Hey, thank you. Well, thank you, Anne, for inviting us. We are so honored to be part of this amazing lineup, and kudos to you for putting it all together. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And so I'm Linda Ford, and she is
Lana Bastianutti.
And we're coming to you from a little bit north of Boston, 40 miles north of Boston on the Atlantic Ocean. It's a beautiful day here. And just very briefly, Lana and I work together, which is why we're here. And we're primarily focused, we're coaches, and I think we've got about 20 years between us of experience of coaching, which kind of dates us, right? And we came across this new understanding. I think it was about 4 years ago.
About the same,
yeah. So the area that we like to work in most of all is this whole area of insecurity. And so we thought for this talk that we would look at the issue of rejection, because it kind of comes under that big umbrella, right, of insecurity. Rejection is right there, and it's one of the biggies. And so there's also an interesting saying that you always teach what you need to learn most. And that is certainly the case for me after many years of feeling insecure and really kind of buying into rejection and those kinds of emotions. And I'm sure Lana's the same.
We were both drawn to it for the same reasons. Yeah.
And we actually just published our first book this year about insecurity. And what's really interesting is that when you write a book about this subject and you give talks and interviews, there's this kind of assumption on the part of people that you're kind of done with it, that you're over it. It's like, we don't feel insecure anymore. We never feel rejected, right? And it's actually not true. We still have that, those feelings hit us every now and again, and we continue to feel the full range of this beautiful human experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is that we're kind of onto it, and we've kind of changed our whole relationship with those feeling states. In fact, it's just very interesting that, Anne, you were trying to get us on here, right? Trying to get us on live on YouTube and Facebook, and we were totally rejected. I mean, we just did not get on, right? So, which is why this is not going to be live.
Not only that, but we've been the only ones that's happened to.
Yeah, so we're sitting here, and part of us is like, what should I make of that? Is there something about me, which is what we're going to talk about today also. Yeah. So I'm going to hand it over to Lana, and she's going to start this thing off.
Okay, so our talk is really about becoming rejection-proof, and really we want to let you know that we have 4 takeaways at the end of this. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Because
and a bonus.
And a bonus. So stay tuned, because we do have some points that we want you to take away from what we're going to be conversing about. But we also want to address the issue of rejection and how pervasive it is. We've all felt it. I mean, life is so lifey. None of us gets out of it scot-free where we haven't experienced a feeling of failure or criticism or rejection. And as you know from the talks that you've probably listened to before, everything comes through us via our thoughts. And with those thoughts, we have feelings. And feelings of rejection are very visceral. They are just in us. And so it seems very real, like rejection really is something that we have to deal with or handle or try to overcome. And that's kind of the direction we're going to be looking at, is what is rejection? Demystify what it is, what we're misunderstanding about it, and just sort of know that we've kind of been rejected as humans. We've been rejected throughout our entire lives, starting very, very young with hearing the word no, like no, no, no. And you can see how kids, they don't make it mean the things that we as young adults and grown-ups, how we make it mean. And it seems to me like the pervasiveness of failure, rejection, all those things seem so much more intense when you're in your young years, when you're in your formative, like teen years, when you're trying to figure out how you fit in the world, who you are, how you're going to make your mark. And like the worst thing that can happen is rejection, because you feel like you've lost out on life. Like that's it. You're ejected from the tribe and there's no going back. So we get it. We've both been there where we're just trying to find our way. And the last thing we want is to be rejected. There's this huge fear around that. And Linda.
Yeah, I mean, I can think the main area of my life where it really impacted me was in relationships. I'm sure a lot of young people can relate to that. It's like you want to like fall in love with someone, and this happened to me so many times. The interesting thing is that I was never the kind of person that was without a boyfriend. That's the irony. But if anyone, any boy decided, no, she's not my type, or I'm not going to hang out with her, I took that so personally. So that happened to me a lot. And so I had a relationship thing going on with rejection. But it shows up in, like, I think a big one today is like kids who can't get into the college that they want to get into, or maybe if
a friend group.
Yeah, that was another big one for me. Like some friends saying, we don't want you to be part of our group. I had that when I was young. And then the other one was if you're auditioning for a play or a team sport and you're not chosen, right? So it just shows up all over the place in every area of our life. And we tend to kind of make a thing about it, like it's this big thing. I mean, if you just think about the word itself, rejection, it sounds so harsh, and it has this pejorative, negative tone to it, right? Like when you say the word rejection, it's a dark word. It's a place that, is full of despair for a lot of people. So we tend to kind of say that word or hear that word and turn it into, I'm not good enough. I don't match up to what these people want. I'm missing something, what's wrong with me? Why don't they like me? Why don't they love me? So, it's all of those dark and kind of really despairing emotions that we latch onto that word. What do you think?
Yeah. It really evokes such a visceral sensation in your body. Like, even if I were to say to you, Linda, I reject you.
I know.
You're out. I mean, you just like, you just feel it in your body. It does feel like you're going to die, or that your life is over. Like, that's it. My life's over. I didn't get on the cheerleading squad. True story. But, like you just think, what does that mean about me? The thing is, we make it so personal. And this is what you're alluding to. Like, we make it a thing. Like, rejection is this tangible, real thing. And it's super personal. And of course it feels personal because we put all the details of our life in it to explain, what it means for our lives. And it's in our voice, so it sounds like us. So it definitely feels personal. But again, if you look back at kids, like, how personal do they take how many no's they get in a day? Like, no, I'm not going to play with you right now. And they're like right back at you. How about now? And you're like, no, not now. Mommy's got, how about now? They do not make it personal. And this is coming from a woman who took bumper cars personally. I don't know if you know what bumper cars are. And the whole purpose. Can you believe this? The whole purpose of the thing is to bump into people. And I used to just like take a little drive around and just think, well, why would they bump into me? Like, what? It was just ridiculous. That's the extent to which I took things personally. And, you know, it's funny, but from an outsider's point of view, with the thinking I had in that moment, it looked real. It looked like, oh my God, do they not like me? Like, what's wrong with me that they would pick me to bump? And, and, you know, it's funny because you can see how unpersonal the whole thing is. All in my mind, it was created.
You know, what's coming up also is that, here's the thing, when you are so-called rejected, right, by someone or a group, it's normal to feel disappointed. I mean, we're not saying that, you know, you shouldn't feel that, but you know how it is. It's kind of like there's a sadness or a disappointment or a frustration that you'll feel, and that's perfectly normal. You're entitled to feel that. But it's when we kind of like put a layer upon layer of other thinking, like, well, what's wrong with me, or why am I not good enough? That's when you go down that rabbit hole, that's when it starts to get a little bit kind of, you know, like you kind of lose yourself. So we're saying that, yes, it's normal to feel the disappointment. There's something clean about that emotion, right? It's like grieving. You know, grieving is a normal thing to do when in times of sadness. But to put extra layers and layers of thinking on top of that and make it mean something about you, that's when it starts like becoming the thing in our life. And what results from that is it interferes with your sense of just taking risk in the world, or getting in the way of what you really want to do, because you're thinking, well, if I'm not good enough, then I better back off, you know, and I can't really take that risk of being vulnerable again, or exposing, you know, who I am, or just showing up in life. So
and if you're so afraid of that feeling, like that uncomfortable feeling we all get when we feel rejected or we fail at something, and we think that's a problem, that I'm feeling that. I don't like that feeling. I never want to feel that again. So we start avoiding, we start creating a life that's kind of in a prison to keep us safe, because we don't like those feelings. And what you know, we've talked about in this whole series that you've talked about is how transient the nature of thought is. That we have thought, we have a feeling that brings it all to life, we feel it, and it moves on. It's only when we kind of dig down and dig in and make it mean something that we make it bigger and bigger and bigger, and think it is something real and something about us, and we kind of hold it in place. And its nature is to just keep moving. And I have an example. My daughter in grade school, grade 6, within the very short space of time, she had 3 things happen to her that she could easily have said, well, I'm marked for life. Like, just I've got a label now on me that says reject. Oh gosh, I hope she doesn't see this. I just realized.
Do you have her permission?
No, I don't. I love you, honey. I didn't say which one. So the first incident was, you know, in gym class where they line you up against a wall and they pick teams.
Oh, God,
and she was like the smallest, tiniest, scrawny little kid, little girl. And so she got picked last. Like, she was left on the wall. But she didn't just get picked last. They forgot she was standing on the wall and started playing the game.
Oh.
So, you know, obviously,
that's an example of how she's entitled to feel what she's feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's just
I know.
horrible.
I know.
Yeah.
So that happened. We dealt with that and what she was feeling, and explained everything to her. And then she had her grade 6 graduation, and her whole friend group ended up getting awards except for her. She was the only one in her friend group not to get one. And then there was that. So she was like, wait a minute, what is this? And then the
Wow.
next day, the teachers realized that they had missed a whole bunch of awards. And so they awarded it to the other kids that hadn't gotten theirs. And her award said he instead of she. And so she thought, are you kidding me? And at that point, like, it was really great, because we do tend to have a sense of humor with stuff. So we were able to show her the lighter side of this, like how ridiculous this whole thing is. And that the mistake we make is we think that rejection, failure, criticism, like it takes little dings out of us, little marks, it diminishes us, and it's permanent. You know, this is now who I am. I'm less than what I used to be. And so we had to show her, no, none of that means anything. Don't hold that. Don't keep that alive in your memories, in your life, because it doesn't mean any of that. It's just a moment in time that you experienced that is moving through you, and it does not need to mark you at all.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You kind of wonder who came up with this word rejection, you know? And so what I would like to suggest is invite you to, how could we see this word differently? How could we perceive it in a new way? And one of the ways that I have chosen to see it over the years is, instead of using the word rejection, why don't we see it as just someone else having a preference, right? They're just having a preference, and you're not it. and so, you know, when you consider how many people are on the planet, okay, it's like 7.5 billion people on the planet.
7.8, something like that.
And it's kind of, in a way, a bit illogical and even ridiculous to expect that every single one of them is going to like or even love us, right? Love or even like us. And so if we kind of like just see, like, if somebody is not choosing you for whatever, it's just their preference. It's got nothing to do with you. It's about their choice, in the same way that they could go to a buffet and, you know, choose spinach over broccoli. They don't like broccoli, but they like spinach. And so if we can see that everybody else is creating their own reality and just making their own decisions based on their own preferences, it kind of takes the sting out of it. It kind of takes like Lana was saying, how we take it so personally. And also, if you could just kind of look at the fact that you yourself, who thinks you have been rejected, are also making preferences all the time. You're also doing it to other people. And you don't like, you know, a decent person, you'd say, well, it's just, you know, I've got nothing against them. There's nothing wrong with them, but I just prefer to be with someone who's more introverted as a friend, or extroverted. It's just your own preference, and there's nothing wrong with having that.
And it's not even just people. It's, you know, we feel inclined towards soccer over football. Oh, that's going to be confusing, isn't it, for British? We prefer baseball over swimming, you know, like we just have these inclinations, like no, I like oranges, I don't really like bananas. Like, okay, the banana and the orange have no feelings about that. It's just a preference.
Yeah,
it's okay. It's not personal. It's just an inclination. So when we take a little bit of space away from it being so personal, it allows you to see it for what it really is. Just thought being brought to life in the moment, and you're feeling it, and it looks real, but it's not really made of anything. And it's only being kept alive as long as you're thinking it. And otherwise it moves on, which kind of leads to like our innate resiliency. Like, we think, especially in our young years, that we're never going to live over something, a breakup, or not getting into the college we want, or getting a B instead of an A, or a D instead of a C, whatever. We think we're never going to live past that. And yet we have this core, this essence within us, whatever you want to call it, that is damage proof, that is not affected by the experiences of life. It is intact. It's like, well, I mean, we have a little Russian doll here, if you know these things, you know, and the core is always solid. It's the only one that does not break. The other ones open up and splinter and whatever, we can take them apart, but that core is always intact. And that's our essence. That's who we really are. When we don't identify with all of our thinking and all of our personalities and who we think our identity is and our friend group and all of this, when we mix up who we are with all of that thinking, which is made of thinking, instead of the core of who we are, we get ourselves in a little bit of trouble. We take these things personally. We make them a thing. We keep them alive. We drag them through the years as if that's, yeah, you know, this happened to me and now I'm less than. And it doesn't serve us. We have to realize in this moment, if you think back to how many things you've already bounced back from, we have this bounce back effect. We always get up. And there was a movie, Captain Marvel. I'm not sure if any of your viewers have seen it, but there's a segment in that, the sequence in which she kind of goes into her mind and into her memories and recalls like what she's really made of. And there's this sequence where they show how many times throughout her life growing up she fell down, she failed, and she got up. She got up every single time. And that's the nature of our core as human beings. We have this outer container in which experience goes through, but inside that is this core of resiliency that rejection can't even touch. It's not even recognized there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to when I was kind of jilted or dumped by someone, you know, that I wanted to be in a relationship with. And my younger girlfriends, they would go through the same thing. And I would see them bounce back quicker than I would bounce back. And it would take me, it seemed like it took me forever to get over it because I just so got into it, and, you know, and I used to say to them, you know, how come you're not, you know, paralyzed like I am? And they would just say, well, you know, I am sad, but I just got to move on. There's plenty of other fish in the sea, you know? So we do see that variation with people. It's like, we do see it out there. We may not, even if you can't see it yourself, you're through your own experience. If you just look around, you see people bouncing back and being resilient. And there was one thing I just want to throw in, because I'm just having this insight about the big paradox, right? About feeling rejection and not having this a lot of busy thinking around it, right? Is that when you're someone who has a lot of that busyness around you and you're totally in your head like I was, and I'm feeling woe is me and I'm not good enough and I can't do this and blah, 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 it actually was repelling people from me, you know? And the people who have those, you know, they're the same experience of rejection, but they don't kind of have all this busyness and they don't let it get them down. That's actually really attractive quality. And that's actually what draws people to them, because they've got this presence, right? They're able to still be themselves at their core and not allow all of this stuff around them, all this busy thinking, to really bring them down, you know, because we've all had the experience of being around someone who's like negative or sad or, you know, depressed. And it's kind of like, okay, we can understand it, but after a year, it gets a bit of a drag, you know. I'm just exaggerating. But that's the paradox here, is that you will experience less rejection when you can kind of see, not get bogged down by all of that excessive layer upon layer of thinking about who you are and your worthiness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And speaking of the busyness, sort of piggybacking on what you're saying about, you know, when we get busy in our minds, we just don't do as well. And when we get busy about rejection and what that means and I'll never be good enough, and I've got a label on me, and everybody can see it now. Like there's literally a tag that says loser, and every environment I'm in, they can all see it, and so we show up differently. And it's interesting, if you watch people, they'll show up in a way, some will show up in a way that compensates, like overcompensates for that. So they'll be like, oh, I'm the life of the party. I'm going to be loud and boisterous, and like my energy is going to be all out here to hide that. Yeah. Uncomfortable rejection feeling. Yeah. And people can smell that a mile away. We don't even, you take it for a while and then you can see right through it, like what's really going on.
That's your energy.
Yeah, that's a busy mind too. And then the opposite of that is when we then turn into ourselves and we become self-conscious about everything. So like even if you're at a dance and you never want to dance, or if you're asked to dance, you're like, into yourself. Yeah. Like your mind is like all about you. It's not even in the present moment. You're thinking about how am I coming across? What are they thinking of me? Like you're not even in the moment with the other people anymore. Yeah. And people see through that as well. But when you can see, when that busyness sort of settles down, your mind quiets down because you realize it's all thought. And its nature is to move on, like everybody's talked about the weather. We have thought storms and they move on. The nature of weather is to change. So do our thoughts. And when we realize that on a really deep level and see that, it just kind of falls away. And then suddenly you're left with presence. And you're in the moment. And you're just there.
Yeah. So Anne, that's what we've got here, and because we are not live, we've got some takeaways that we want to share but we thought that before we do that, and the bonus, before we do that, if you have any questions for us, because I know we can't.
We can. We are live. We are live on Zoom. We're just not live on. We are live on Zoom, and we do have people here. So that if anyone,
that's fine then. Great, excellent. I thought it was just us recording us.
No. We are live on.
Hey, hi, live people.
Well, so much for editing.
We are live on Zoom, just not live on YouTube. Well, we may still be live on YouTube as far as I know, but we are definitely live on Zoom. So we do have guests here. So if anyone wants to ask a question at all, if anyone's got a comment or wants to ask a question, you can just chat into the chat box. I just checked the chat box there. And if you actually want to come on and speak, you can do that. You can just put your hand up in the
we'd be happy to answer any questions or to have a conversation with you,
and you can come on.
We're all in this together, guys. No,
Lord knows.
So far, everybody's keeping very quiet.
I'm a lurker too. Like I like to lurk.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So, do I have?
Have you ever had real rejection, like really bad rejection?
Me? Loads.
Bigger than the bumper cars?
Well, maybe not bigger than that. No, but the funny thing with the bumper cars is that actually, when you said that, I thought actually it's the other way around, because
that's what I said too. Yeah,
it's the other way around because if you're with friends, what I used to feel was, well, why aren't they bumping me? Because the whole point was to be bumped. If they weren't choosing you to bump, that was a rejection.
So this points to separate realities, okay?
There we go.
You two had a totally different reality than me. To me, it was like, what? I've been avoiding everybody. Why would you try to?
Yeah.
I think it also had to do with my deep-seated. The whole premise to this game is kind of horrible. Like, why would you want to, bang into somebody? So I think that was underneath all of it too. So
yeah. We actually, I think the rejection that we have experienced lately, Lara and I, is when someone unsubscribes from our newsletter. That's like, why are they doing that? Don't they enjoy what I'm writing when I write my blog or something? It's like, we still feel that. And it comes through, I think mainly it comes through our work. If people don't like what we're doing, or they didn't like our book, that's another big one, somebody writes a bad review. It's a form of, we haven't had one, no we haven't, but it's a form of rejection if they do. But yeah, we still have that tendency to take things really personally. It's like, they should love me, they should like me, I'm well-intentioned. It's all good intentions, so, but it just speaks to this, variety, this variegatedness in life, and how we're just, I don't like broccoli, so it's okay,
And it is about separate realities. It is about what thoughts you're listening to, because I remember, I think it might have been Jamie that said one time about getting bad reviews, that it was really good to get bad reviews because it was to do with, at least somebody was watching and caring and taking notice, and it was more important that they were taking notice than it was that they thought it was good, because and the fact that they had read it and were making a comment meant that they had read it and taken it in, which meant that at some stage it might still have.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Wow. That's a healthy mind.
Yeah. And as we sort of talked about making rejection a thing, it's like, it's exactly what you're saying, Anne. What we put our attention to grows. When we put our attention there in the rejection, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it envelopes us so much that that's all we see. And so when we think it, that's what we feel, and that's what we experience. So it's understandable, but when it's, you're innocently creating that feeling within you through what you're paying attention to. And in that moment, you can just as easily be paying attention to another thought. How many thoughts do we have in a day that we just let go right by? Like, isn't it interesting how, you can have a ton of compliments or positive reviews about something, but your focus goes on that one person that, I didn't like your comma there. And you're like, what? And you just sit there and stare at that comment, and it seems like the other nice things, they don't count.
Yeah.
And that's where we're putting our attention. We're creating that within us innocently, but there's a choice. Like, we don't have to stay there. And again, it goes to the preferences, that person didn't like the comma. Okay, so what? Move on.
Yeah.
I just thought about when you said about the newsletter. I get the same thing, I try not to look if people are unsubscribing, but the other way around, when because I'm researching for the resources and things, I sign up for everybody's newsletters, and then I'm getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails, and I don't need to read them all because I know all of it anyway, or I know a lot of it. I don't know all of it, but I know a lot of it, and I know what people are saying. But I don't unsubscribe because I don't want to upset people.
I go through that one too. Yeah. What are they going to think of me? They're going to think I'm a real bitch for unsubscribing or whatever, or insensitive. Works the other way around too. So we're really good at creating all this drama in our head, aren't we? We're really good at like putting these brilliant movies together. I mean, some of my movies in the past around this area have been so dramatic, melodramatic, and full of, pathos and just despair. And boy, if I could have seen that on a movie screen, that would be.
Have you ever had that? Have you ever had that when you're in the pathos, in the drama of it, and then you have a moment where you're just onto yourself and you're watching yourself in the drama going, oh, wow, this is pretty good. This is heavy. You know what? I think I should go outside where it's really windy, because then that's even more dramatic. Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
I've done that where I'm like, oh, yes, this would be a good scene. And it just goes to show, we're not that experience. We're not that thinking and feeling. We're before that. We're kind of watching that, and we're intact. We're whole. We're that core that we talked about. And then there's experience coming through us. And we're the one keeping it alive as long as we pay attention to it.
Yeah, I know a long time ago now, when my first husband left, which was, I had just finished training as a sexual therapist, right? So I had just trained as a sexual and relationship therapist, and that should have meant that I knew, how to make relationships work, really. But that was just when he left, and so that was, yeah. So I mean, obviously he left, and I had been thinking about leaving him, actually, because we were in such a mess. But when he left me, it was. Now I can look back and see, because I didn't understand any of this then. I didn't understand about thinking, and despite having trained as a therapist, right, I had no idea about where the part that thought played in it and how simple it was, actually.
Yeah.
So I was like putting more thought on it and more. Oh, this means that I'm not good enough, and why doesn't he love me? And it means that he doesn't love me enough, and so much thought on it that I felt worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. It's
crazy.
It is. Yeah. It's like burying yourself. It's like getting caught in a swamp, and it just drags you down, into this rabbit hole. Which you can get out of, but it's just that's how you sink deeper. Just like you were saying, those layers and layers of what does this mean? Maybe what did my parents not do? How can I get to the bottom of this? And the myth is there's no bottom to it. There is no bottom. So.
And the crazy thing was that I then also told myself. I mean, I can see it now that I even, like you said, I was aware of telling myself. I was telling myself that I needed to stay upset and to stay miserable and to prove that I really had loved him. Because if I became happy again and enjoyed life, that would show that I didn't really love him.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So
that is complicated.
The pretzels we put ourselves in. The other thing about, we all want to feel wanted or loved. That's totally normal. But it also points to where we think our worthiness comes from. That it's out there. It's only when somebody validates me that I'm worthy. So that if somebody leaves me, then I'm not worthy. Or if I've never dated anybody, well, then I must not be wanted. I must not be worthy. And we've got that backwards.
Yeah.
You're already worthy. There's nothing from the outside that can make you worthy. That's just experience going through you. That's just life. And when you know that you've got this core inside you that cannot be touched, there's nothing to prove, it makes your life so much freer. It changes, as we said, it changes your relationship to rejection.
Yeah.
And to the whole worthiness piece. Because if there's nothing to do, you get to just show up and play.
Yeah. Instead of cry.
I know.
Yeah, and I also had thoughts that I wasn't good enough. Everybody would think badly of me because I hadn't been able to make my marriage work, and especially as a therapist, I'm a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
If my own relationship wasn't working, how could I possibly be any good to anybody else?
Interesting. Yeah.
And no one in my family had been divorced, and what did that mean about me? And so much stuff. Yeah. And like you said, the more I did that, the more unattractive I became to him. He just wanted to get away even further.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I had my first rejection in love, right, with guys, I would, have my thoughts about and feelings about not being good enough. And it was almost as if I carried that with me to the next relationship and then the next one. And so it's almost like all these feeling states and all this thinking became part of my personality, right? And I thought that was the real me. But actually, I was just kind of, I was just carrying all this stuff with me. And so other people were picking up that energy. Like you said, why would anybody find you attractive if you're showing up insecure? Oh, please like me, please love me, please go out with me, you know. And so they're picking up on that energy. And I used to carry that energy with me from one relationship to another, and it actually got worse. And until I figured out, you know, got onto myself and figured out what was going on. But yeah, which is why we were talking about, you know, the paradox is that the more you're aware of this, it's like if you really want to be attractive to people and you really want to be present, be totally present and comfortable in your own skin and have people really want to be with you, then it's just having that awareness about what's going on. That thinking and those thoughts and feelings are not the true you.
Yeah.
And that was really big for me to see that. Should we share our takeaways and our bonus?
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah. So again, we're just, you know, just in case you've forgotten what we've just been talking about.
or gone, what?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
The first one I have here is that everyone on the planet experiences this. And that was another huge thing for me is just, if you just remind yourself that you are not the only one going through this. It is just like everybody has a nose and everybody has a tummy, we all experience rejection, and it's nothing personal, right? If you can just remind yourself that that's what's going on, it kind of takes that edge off, like you're not the only one going through this.
Yeah.
Right? So that was the first one.
Yeah. Life can be messy and you're not going to get out of it without a little bit of mess sometimes. And that's fun sometimes too. The second point, the second takeaway is we're creating our reality moment to moment with our thinking. As we're thinking, we're feeling, and that's what we're experiencing. It's not a camera that's recording. Like, this analogy is so good. It's not a camera recording reality or the truth. It's your thinking. It's a projector where your thinking is coming through and projecting a truth according to what you're thinking and feeling in the moment. So that means that, you know, the only thing that comes alive is what you're projecting in your mind at that moment. That's what's being created. There's not this rejection that's still there in the corner, but the projector is not recording it at this point. It doesn't exist unless you're creating it in your mind.
Yeah. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Because that's all you have to really see, right? You don't have to go outside and change and manipulate and try and convince people. So that's really good to see that. So that was 2. Number 3 is this whole idea of changing your relationship with the word rejection, and change it. Instead of saying, oh, I feel so rejected, you just say to yourself, oh, they're just having a preference, right? And that preference isn't me, but they're just having a preference. And it's just not me right now. That's it.
And then the last, which is probably the biggest underlying piece, which is your innate resilient nature. Like, that's who you really are. Those are the qualities, that clarity, that resilience, that bounce back is who you are. That's who you are. You're always going to bounce back. That's why we two, with all our failures, criticisms, and rejections from the past, we're still sitting here. You know, we're still standing. Hey, there was that movie, Rocket Man. Elton John, I'm Still Standing. He wrote that song. Yeah. That, you know, he went through all sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's still standing because that's our nature. It's to come back. When we don't take all this so seriously, when we allow the design to do what it's naturally designed to do, which is move right on. That's us.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
Oh, what's the bonus?
Oh, the bonus is, again, you can change the word rejection to not yes. It's not a yes right now. And then the other bonus is we came across this Jack Canfield's quote, you know, the one who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul or whatever it is. Yeah. And he said, what did he say? Some will, some won't, And so what? That's a nice little mantra to have. Put that in your wallet. Some will, some won't. And so what?
It takes the sting out of stuff.
Yeah.
Takes it away from being personal. Some will, some won't. So what?
Yeah. So that's what we got for you, Anne.
No, that's really good. Thank you very much. And I think the main thing for people to know is to go out and try all of those things. You know, just just see what seems. It sounds like we're saying this is how it is, but you know, and you may not agree with that. You may not agree. You may not. You need to find out for yourself.
Experiment.
Test
it out. Yeah. And I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunities to feel rejection, to test it out. They will come along, those experiences, and then you get to remind yourself. It's always about reminding. It's not so much doing. It's like reminding. Oh yes, I remember hearing that. You know.
Yeah. I
remember hearing how this equipment actually works, and I kind of it's kind of like if you're taught how to drive a car, right? And you know how to, if you drive a stick, right, with the gears, you have to learn how to use the gears. But if you know how to use the gears and you're still, after a year or 2 years, driving in second gear and you never get out of second gear, right? Then that's not good. So I'm going to use this word that I'm going to use it anyway.
Oh God.
Responsibility. I'm old enough to say that. There comes a time in our life, it's like when you're told how something works, right? How the equipment works, then you have to take responsibility to try it out and see, well, you know, maybe this is the way it works, and maybe I should just kind of, you know, look in that direction and try something out. So it's like, take some responsibility and try this out for yourself. Use, you know, remind yourself what we've been discussing today.
Or look in that direction.
And just keep looking in that direction and just see if anything shows up for you or falls away. Because something is going to fall away from you. It's not that you have to add or be someone else. It's just going to fall away from you. And it's just kind of like dead skin, you know. It's like I burnt my arm last week and I went to the doctor this morning and I've got all this new skin. It's like all this old skin is just, I'm sorry, it's a bit gross, but it's just like falling away.
I have to look at it.
It's just falling away and I'm not doing anything because it's by nature. It's just, that's the way it works.
And can I just do a little caveat to what you just said? We forget. We're humans. We're going to forget because we're going to get caught up in it. And we're going to be in second gear sometimes.
Yeah.
Until we remember, we're like, oh, there's a third and a fourth gear. Great. Okay, let me shift again. Let me stop paying attention to this. I don't need to. It's okay. So give yourself a break in that way that, we forget, you know, and we have to go, hey,
sure,
you know, some will, some won't. So what?
You do.
So just remember that as well.
Actually, that's quite a good way of remembering it, because if you are in second gear, you're struggling, right? It's not going like it should. You're not going.
You're moving, you're moving, but it's a very difficult drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get into third, fourth gear, it's like you're propelled forward, and things become a lot easier. It's like this ease just kicks in, right?
Yeah. It's like others have probably said, your feelings are the guide. They're the thing going, hey, pay attention here a little bit.
Yeah.
You're a little bit off, you know.
Yeah.
Your thinking isn't clear. So, take a second look.
Yeah, that's great.
Live life, you know.
So if people want to hear more from you or learn about you or come see, they can. There is a link on the page that will be underneath this video that will take them to all of your links and including your book. Do you want to say anything about your book while you're here?
Yeah.
We wrote a book.
Here it is. Oh, okay. I just happen to have a copy of it here. Women in Confidence. The truth about the lies we tell ourselves. So this is chock-a-block full of our own personal stories that are quite personal.
Yeah.
about our own struggles with insecurity. And so
pick it up. It's really, it'll help you again, just look in this direction. And you know, we wrote it from the heart, and it was vulnerable because we had to go through once again some of the things we experienced in our own lives, and kind of speak from that place, and what the truth of it, how we saw it then, and what the truth is, like how our relationship has changed to it. So
yeah, you know what, it's like, because I mentioned at the top of the hour, and we've been coaching, I've been a coach for about 10 years and Lana's about 8 years. And when we came together a couple of years ago and decided we wanted to work together, and we thought the first thing we want to do is write a book, and what should that book be about? And it occurred to both of us that throughout our coaching career, the one thing that really stood out was the fact that there were a lot of really smart, well-trained, professional, brilliant, talented, creative people out there in the world who, despite all of that, were still feeling insecure. They were still holding themselves back. They were still letting rejection get in the way of them moving forward. And we thought, wow, what's going on here? And actually, we realized that we were one of them too, you know. And so we thought that, you know, this has to change. We have to write something and just talk about this issue that, you know, in
a new way.
Yeah.
That hasn't been, it's not something to do. It's really is something to see. And people hate hearing that because it's like, no, just give me I want something to do. We're such doing creatures, but it really, when you look in this new direction and you see something deeply, like you have your own insight about it, it's like the veil gets lifted and it doesn't seem like so much work. And we're actually on a project right now. We're working on a really exciting project right now. We're working on an online program right now that we're really, really super excited about. So
we've teamed up with a voice coach who's also a 3P person, and so we're it's called. Can I tell you the title of it? It's called The Gentle Art of Speaking Boldly, and it is for the shy, the scared, and the softly spoken. And it's about how to really free your voice and feel comfortable in your own skin to be expressive. So, which is why we've been talking a lot about presence, because we're really kind of exploring what does it mean to be truly present with someone and to get up and share your ideas. So that's what it's a really juicy topic, and we're so excited to share it from a 3 principles perspective. Yeah. That's the first time we've ever announced it. So we better.
You got the exclusive.
We have to come up with the goods now. Yeah. So that's what we're doing.
Yes, exclusive here on The Secret of Everything Live. Wow. Brilliant. That sounds really good. So fantastic. Thank you very much. And
thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Underneath the video very soon. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming. It's been brilliant.
Yeah. Our hat. Our capes are off to you, because this is a tremendous amount of work that you're putting forward. And I know it doesn't feel like work because it's your passion, but you're doing such a tremendous service for so many people that, I'm getting emotional.
I know, it's really amazing.
I just think it's brilliant what you're doing. So I want to thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So everyone, listen to as many of them as possible to get it out into the world. Yeah. And thank you very much for making it so much fun.
Oh, thank you, Anne. It's been a pleasure.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.